Everything you said we already knew, more or less.
Well, here's something that you didn't know.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is the 5th episode, 5. I think I'm starting to get into the role of these. As you can see from last time, new hairstyle. Basically, I don't like hair touching my ears, so that's why I opted for this. And also inspired from the Vikings TV show. So, anyways, getting into the image and the story behind the image. Thank you for the comments that you've left in previous shows, the likes, the views. There's already an encouraging little bit of growth. So thank you all. And yeah, so the image is opening up right now, I think. Slowly but surely. And there it is. Okay. So you can see here that it's an old house, old homestead that was on the prairies. And that was one thing I enjoyed being down in Three Hills, was that there were so many old abandoned houses and like old farms and homesteads that you could really just sense like the history and sort of the past that was there. And yeah, they make really good subjects when most of the time you just have farmers' fields. But these houses allow a little bit of breakup in the monotony of what the fields have to offer. And so, yeah, near the end of the school year, as Celine was finishing up, Celine's my wife, I don't know if I mentioned that before, I had some free time and I'd go out in the evenings and look for sunsets and try to find new locations. So I'd just drive down random roads, like half an hour outside of Three Hills, Alberta, and see what I could find. And so this image, I was driving and yeah, I just stumbled upon it. I think I've seen it in a few other photos on social media from people who've gone to the college. Lots of people in the area just go around. I'm not sure if you can hear, but my puppy is scratching at the door. Hopefully someone lets her out. But yeah, back to the image. What really draws me to this image was the orange tiles or shingles that are still on the house, and then the orange siding. And because of the orange and blue, those are like complementary colors, and so they work really well together, and that really helped with the overall aesthetic of the photo. And then also we have this post here that from a fallen fence, and it helps give a sort of like separate the image. So we have the house over here, and then we have the post, and then we have the moon and this tree. I really like this tree and the moon in there, and sort of the soft light that was happening. But yeah, so there's not a whole lot of story to it. I'm really curious as to what the story behind some of these old houses are, and like why they're abandoned, or who lived there before, what kind of families grew up there, and the reason for leaving. Like it's fascinating if you think of what went on in these homes. Yeah, people grew up in them. So think back to the house that you grew up in, and then imagine like 50 years down the road it just being abandoned and looking like this on the screen. It's quite interesting, like how minute amount of time we're actually on Earth for, and that sort of brings it into perspective. So yeah, let's get into the image. Not a whole lot of story into this. Basically, it was just in a field. I walked up to it, I looked around, tried to find a composition I liked and an angle that I liked, and this is what I settled on. But yeah, getting into the editing aspect of it. So let's go camera raw defaults, and this is where it started. So you can see that it's kind of flat, and I exposed for the sky because I knew I wanted detail in the clouds and the sky, and the sun wasn't really lighting up the clouds a whole lot. It was sort of just setting and not super impressive. But then also I tend to underexpose my foregrounds a lot of the time, because the details in the shadows, when you bring the shadows up, are really evident. Like you're able to bring up shadows easier than you're able to recover highlights. So like if I was to expose for the moon, expose for the house and like the shadows in the house or some of these darker areas, I wouldn't be able to bring back some of the highlights in the clouds. It would just be too bright and too overexposed. And so now, yeah, so you can see the before and after there, a little bit of a difference. I don't really necessarily remember where I started here, but as usual, let's start from the white balance down. The original white balance was really cool. And so you can see how the sky is a lot more blue than it was teal, and then this orange and the grass also looks pretty cold. It kind of gives an interesting look. Like, it's not bad, but I definitely prefer that warm evening light, and it takes away a little bit of the blues of the sky, but it helps match the tones of the blue with the orange on the house, and I think it's a more realistic color on this foreground and on the grass, on the dead grass. And then exposure, I raised it up to again help bring out detail in the foreground, and then contrast I brought down because I wanted just a light feel to it, and sorry. And then highlights I brought all the way down because I still wanted to recover the details in the clouds. So let's bring the exposure down to where it was, and so you can see everything is really dark there, but then when I brought it up, it brightened up the foreground as well as the background, and then if I had the highlights at where they were, the background wouldn't be as colorful as it would. It would have a lot more light leaking through these clouds, and I wanted a little bit more detail and represent sort of the more realistic look of what I saw. And so you can see those clouds almost maintain their same clarity and darkness when I balanced the highlights and the exposure. And then shadows, I boosted those up to 83, and that was to again raise the details or get the detail in the foreground to where I liked it, and to match the exposure of the clouds or in the sky and the foreground, to have a balanced exposure on both of them. And then with the whites again and the blacks, I just wanted a little bit of a white point there to make sure that it's properly exposed. And then same with the blacks, you're able to see the blacked out shadows in the house, and then that's fine because you don't really need to see those. The blacks and whites are important when you are printing. Like, you don't want a really blown out sky or like fully white sky, because then the printer isn't going to do a good job of registering the transition from pure white to color. And then same with blacks, it's just going to like saturate that spot with black ink, and you won't get the best print quality, or at least that's what I've been told. If you know more about printing than I do, comment below. I love printing things, printing my prints, my landscape shots especially, and hanging those up. I sell them, and yeah, seeing them hanging in people's homes or in restaurants is really gratifying. That's sort of like the final result of, okay, I went and took this photo, I edited it, and I printed it, and that's the exclamation mark to the entire process. Yeah, so let me know if you like printing your prints, or if you do, or maybe where you get them printed. Do you like canvas, or do you like photo paper, aluminum, wood? I'd love to hear. My preference is photo paper, like high quality photo paper or canvas. I've done a lot of canvas. And yeah, so we're through the top menu part, down to clarity and vibrance. Clarity I raised to 24 to bring out a little bit of the grit on the house and just add some texture to the overall image. I really like clarity because of the texture aspect, but lots of people can go way overboard and just overdo it and make really grungy looking photos. And for some styles that's okay, but for the average image, it doesn't really work very well. And you'll notice, like, the difference between a lot of amateurs and then people that have been doing photography for a little while is that amateurs will tend to find a style they really like and then or a slider they really like and just abuse it. For me, at first, it was vibrance. I loved everything like super vibrant and bright and colorful. And now it's more, I know not to push it too far, or even I like to desaturate things a little bit. And for this, vibrance, I just used my general +10, and I thought it brought out the colors pretty nicely. And then sharpening was at 55, and then the colors, I brought the aquas up quite a bit in saturation with the blues, and that was to get this unique color in the sky. It's not super accurate to what was actually there that evening, because the light just wasn't working out, but it gives sort of that light, summery sunset feel. And so what I did with that, what I do a lot of time is just go to this tool. I'm not sure what it's called, but then I just go saturation, and I can adjust whichever color I want. So you can see I'm desaturating the sky there, and if I was to leave it there, then it would just look desaturated, or I could click on the color and raise it up, and that oversaturates it a bunch. So it's a pretty cool tool when you're wanting to change specific colors. And then I could do the same with the orange on the house, and obviously that affects anything that is registering as orange or yellow in this case. And then so you can see also in the luminance panel that I adjusted the blues and the oranges quite a bit. Let's bring that back down to default. And again, that was sort of to adjust the tones, and so I raised the orange luminance a lot to help boost the orange shingles on the house, as well as to get rid of a little bit of the I don't know what it's called, the oversaturated tones on the grass and on the post. And then I brought down the the brightness in the sky to help just not have a blown out sky. And we can go that again. And it also brings in a lot more detail on the clouds. And by raising the brightness on the oranges, I got rid of a little bit of it on the clouds, which I think is fine. It just brightens them. But I much rather that balance than what it was without that brightening. Because the house doesn't really pop a whole lot, and neither does this grass and this fence post here. By having the clouds white, it brings focus back into the main subject. And yeah, where were we? And then obviously you do your lens correction, and then the dehaze or the effects. I did that a little bit just to bring some contrast into the clouds again and darken the sky just a tad. And then vignetting I did quite a bit, and that's again to bring focus back to the middle here. It's really hard not to get carried away with the vignette tool, but I find a little bit of it really helps and goes a long way. It sort of hides or gets rid of the highlights in the corners, because like this highlight here of the cloud takes away the distraction of the focus again. And then same with this grass along here, it sort of just like pops out at you. And I like to just make that a little more subtle. And that does it for that panel. And then the crop, again, you'll see I did a 4x5 crop, and that was really to just eliminate the extra trees on the side and the extra bush here. There's like going into it, I knew that I wanted to do this crop because again, there's not anything really spectacular over here on this side of the frame, and this post here lines up perfectly with this third when it's in a 4x3 crop or 4x5 crop. So let's just hit enter on that again. And spot removal. I can't recall if I did anything there. I didn't. But I did do a little bit on the moon and on this post. So I'm going to clear all of them. You can see what I did there. So I brightened up the top tip of that post to make it a little less yellow. And the thing about a lot of these images is that once you see these things, you can't really unsee them. So that's where it might be a negative that I'm showing all this, but I think the process of, or my thought process and showing you all what I see and my whole thinking method is helpful and important. It might be able to help some of you learn and improve your skills. And by no means am I done learning. Like every day I'm trying to watch videos and get better at my craft. But it's a long process, and you don't get better overnight, and you just keep practicing and creating and improving, hopefully improving. And then so the moon, you can see that I just painted in to make it a full moon rather than have a little bit of fringing there. Oh, that's why it was like that. Sorry, I didn't even realize that I actually made an HDR of this photo, so that means I stacked 3 images. One that was exposed for each variation. And it didn't stand out to me that I did HDR, because when I do HDRs, I try to not make it very obvious, and I try to do it very subtly. It's more so for me to make sure I have 3 good exposures that I can decide on which direction I want to go when editing. And so I think the reason that the moon looks a little different is either because it moved a little bit while bracketing the 3, or that it wasn't actually a full moon quite yet. And I think it just looks better having the full moon there. It's like, I mean, I could get rid of the moon too, but I think it adds a little bit to the photo. And then this one right here, I really just brightened it up and desaturated it, or made it cooler, because it looked really yellow on the top. Like I could even make it probably a little more blue, and that would look fine. Let's go select that and bring it more blue. And yeah, so even there, it looks fine, but that's where I ended up, was where it was, and I don't remember where it was before. But moving on to the next part, I also included a gradient filter to bring out some of the orange on the clouds again. Or no, I didn't do it to bring out the orange. I did it to match the tone, or get the tones of the sky that I wanted. So I'll clear all that, and so you can see how blue it is. And that's actually where a lot of the color from the sky comes from, is this filter. It's interesting going back and seeing, like, okay, what did I do to achieve these? And I should probably review the images before I get into them, but I like sort of verbally thinking out loud and sharing that. But gradient filters are great. And that also, I guess, answers why I desaturated this post a little bit. It was because this yellow filter that I brought down from the sky is influencing this part of the post, making it look yellow, more yellow than it actually is. Because if I was to get rid of that, you can see the post is still a normal color. And let's put that back. Yeah. So the tones of the sky, I think, play a lot into why I like this photo, and the tones of the orange. And figuring out what tones you want in the final result it will help you bring a photo from being good or decent to being better than good. I'm not going to say great, because it's rare that an image is genuinely great, even though people might comment that on your Instagram posts. Okay, so I think that wraps that up, but I will go over my settings. I did an aperture of f10. I could have done it f16 or anything more, but I wanted to make sure that this post was in focus and that the house was in focus. The post is a little bit out of focus, but it's not too bad. And then the house here is perfectly in focus, nice and sharp. And things get a little out of focus in the foreground, but I think it looks natural most of the time. And then ISO 100 just to keep it low, and then shot at 35 millimeters. The reason I didn't go fully 16 millimeters was because I wanted a little bit of compression and to narrow my view, my field of view, because if I was to go fully wide, then I would have got way more of these trees on the side here, way more sky, and way more of these bushes over here. But by going 35, I was able to really try to focus on my main 3 subjects of the house, the post, and the tree. And then lastly, my shutter speed, 1/125th. I didn't do a long shutter speed because I liked the way the clouds looked. I didn't want to stretch the clouds out by doing a longer shutter speed. And 125 was a good spot to be for me to get enough light onto my camera sensor. Considering I was shooting at f10 and it was sort of dusk. But yeah, I think that wraps things up. If you have any questions, comment below. You can find me on social media at Mason Unrau on Instagram and Mason Unrau Photography on Facebook. Do you have a favorite image that I've gone through so far? I think I'm going to start going through my portfolio, go through all my landscapes, or do one image from each section of my portfolio, and then later this summer I'll do a massive haul, hopefully a massive reboot or makeover on my portfolio images, because there's some that are in there that are from a pretty long time ago. It's not that they're bad, it's just I feel like I should be taking better images than what I have in there, and maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I think it's time for some of them to go. Anyways, thanks for watching. This has been About the Image. Peace.